Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're going to take a look at something which is an absolute bargain but may terrify the living daylights out of you, although possibly unnecessarily. So today we're going to take a look at the Gamemax GS300. This is a SFX power supply and it is currently ridiculously cheap here in the UK from CCL Computers at £11.99 plus postage. Now if you order over a certain amount then you get free postage, so potentially you could pick up this SFX power supply, which is 300 watt, 80 plus rated, for £12, which seems actually quite insane. The normal retail price is somewhere in the region of about £30 to £40, depending on where you shop. And of course, as always, there will be affiliated links in the video description. Those links will generate a small income for us, but it won't cost you anything else to use them. So if you want to help out the channel, then that's a really good place to start. So I should say straight away, obviously, I understand that this isn't for everybody. But if you are someone like me who kind of likes to tinker around with maybe small form factor builds every now and then, you've maybe got an older ITX motherboard, a APU, and you're thinking, well, what power supply do I put in it? They are expensive when it comes to SFX power supplies. Or even if you're just doing a small little test bed and you just need something small and quiet to power up your RGB lighting or whatever it is, I think it's actually a really good choice. And again, for £12, it's £12. That's the price of, what, a couple of pints these days in the UK. Anyway, so we're going to take a look at the packaging. I'll go through the cables, the lengths of them, and what cables it actually has. We'll talk about some of the pros and cons, some of the protection features, and all that kind of good stuff. So if you do want to pick up one of these, at least you're pretty much informed. Now, some of the protections on here, I don't have the facility to test, so I'm going to take Gamemax at their word. Take that with a somewhat large pinch of salt, but again, this is £12 for what it is. I think you could forgive most things. Obviously, don't be putting this with your really expensive APUs and top of the line ITX motherboards. It's probably not suited for that, but for those really cheap little tiny PCs, I think this is going to be just great. So looking at the packaging, you can see this is the Gamemax 300 watt. You've got the ERP rating and also the 80 plus. So this is going to be 85% efficient. It also tells you about the connections on the bottom there. And also on the bottom, it says it's an ATX power supply, but it doesn't. It's a micro SFX power supply. And actually talking of the dimensions of this, so we're looking at 100 millimeters wide, 63 millimeters high, and 125 millimeters deep, so adhering to the SFX power supply standard. On the back of the box, it goes over some of the specifications for the various models available, such as the GS250, the GS275, and also the GS300 that we have here. Now, I will point out as well, even though this is called a 300 watt power supply, the actual 12 volt rail only gets up to about 240. So again, do bear that in mind if you're planning on using this with a very small graphics card or a low powered graphics card. Do definitely bear that in mind that you might be going over the limits, because it isn't a 300 watt power supply as such, at least not for the 12 volt rail, which we normally go by. Again, on the side of the box, it goes over the various different models available and also what levels of power factor correction they have. I'm happy to say the GS300 has active power factor correction, so that's a good sign. Included in the box, obviously, you get the power supply itself. There's also a Gamemax Velcro strap there, which you can use for cable management. You also get a couple of cable ties and 4 screws to mount it into the SFX case. And also there's a user guide which goes through and tells you about the power supply and also what connections go where and what voltages are on them, all that kind of usual stuff. With that out of the way, we can take a look at the power supply itself, and as you can see, there is lots of ketchup and mustard going on here. Again, £12, come on, give me a break. You've got an 80mm fan on there, which actually has a smart PWM control, so it will ramp up as the temperature inside gets hotter, as you'd expect from actually more high-end power supplies. It's not just a static speed, so that's always nice to see. On the side there, you've got the important bit, so this is going to tell you what is actually on the various rails. So a combination between the 3.3 and the 5 volt rail, you've got 100 watts total on there. The 12 volt rail, you're looking at 240, and somehow they managed to kind of squeeze that together and tell you it's a 300 watt power supply, which it kind of isn't, but it kind of is at the same time. So the 12 volt rail, which is the one we generally tend to go by when we're building and designing PCs, is 240 watts at the maximum. Other than that, not a great deal else to look at on here. On the back, you've got your power input, and it also is a full range, so 110 up to 240 volts. Plug it in basically most countries and you should be absolutely fine. Nice ventilation on the back there to allow some of the heat to escape. And internally, you're looking at A mixture of capacitors in there, although there is a Chain X capacitor as the main capacitor, which actually is used on some of the more expensive power supplies on the market. So don't take this as a recommendation of quality, far from it. It's using a similar brand to some of the higher end models, which I think is actually something we should appreciate. Let's take a look at the cables, what we've got. So you've got the main 24-pin power connector, that splits off into a 20 as well. So if you're rocking an older board, then that's absolutely fine. The length of this one, looking at 12 inches in length or 300 millimeters. Next up, we've got our EPS or supplementary power for our CPU. This is an 8-pin, but it does split into two, so you can just slide those apart and you get 2 4s. So again, if you're using an older motherboard that only has the 4-pin, that's going to be absolutely fine. That one itself, 400mm in length, so that's 16 inches. That should reach pretty much most places on smaller form factor builds. Next up, strangely, I'm not entirely sure why they've included this, but it's on here, so I'm going to tell you about it. There is actually a PCIe 8-pin power plug for graphics cards. This also splits into the 6+2, so if you've got an older graphics card, it just needs 6 pins, that's going to be absolutely fine. Again, this has only got 240 watts on the 12-volt rail, so if you're putting a graphics card in here, realistically, depending on the APU, you need to have a kind of 100 watt or less graphics card to prevent any kind of damage to the system or the power supply itself. So obviously do bear that in mind. It has got on there. Again, this one is like the other one, 400mm in length, so 16 inches. If for some reason you decided to put a bunch of drives in your SFX system, then you do have 3 SATA cables, or 3 SATA plugs, I should say, over the 2 cables. So the first cable has 2 plugs on there. So this one, you're looking at 300mm from the power supply to the first plug, and then an additional 150mm to the last one. So that's 1 foot plus 6 inches. And the second one, you've got 300mm from the power supply to the SATA plug. So again, 12 inches. And then you've got 6 inches from the SATA plug to the single Molex connector. We'll quickly touch on some of the protections that this thing actually has in it. Now again, I don't have any way of testing this or validating any of it, so I'm just going from what has been seen on the Clearview site or Clear Plus or whatever it is, the 80 Plus site, and also on Gamemax's own site. So yeah, take these also with a slight pinch of salt. So we've got over voltage protection, under voltage protection, over current protection, overload protection, over power protection, over temperature protection, short circuit protection, and also surge inrush protection. So it seems like there's a lot of protection on here. Whether or not any of it actually works as it's intended to, again, I have no idea whatsoever. The whole idea of this video is just to show you that you can pick up a SFX power supply in the UK for what seems like a ridiculously cheap price. Now, again, of course, like I've said many times already, I am not endorsing this or condoning the use of it. All I'm saying is it's an SFX power supply, it's 300 watts, and it's 12 quid. So if you're interested, the links will be in the video description below. I am expecting some negative comments in this video, as is always the case, because there are people that just want a decent power supply regardless of what they're doing. But I think there is a number of viewers out there who, like myself, want to build a small form factor PC, don't want to invest an absolute ton of money in it, and for the sake of £12, it's got 80 plus rating, bronze. If that is to be trusted, I think this is actually going to be okay. But do temper your expectations. Don't put it with a high-end modern system because it's probably not a great idea. But for some older stuff which you've picked up on eBay, I think this is going to be absolutely fine. Anyway, let me know what you think about this one in the comments section below. I am genuinely looking forward to reading those. But for now, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.